Does South Africa need foreign direct investment, FDI as it's known for short? And if so, why? Are we doing the right things to attract enough FDI? Professor Adrian Saville is with us in the GIBS studio. Adrian, welcome.
Thanks,
What's the answer, first of all, to a basic question? Why do countries need FDI?
The short answer is that emerging countries have a couple of deficits that need to be filled that they are incapable or unlikely to be able to fill very easily from their homegrown resources. The most obvious one is the difference between savings and investment, that the economy simply isn't big enough and incomes aren't high enough to generate the level of savings required to fund investment. The second is that one of the biggest contributors to productivity is on-the-job experience, which comes from skills transfer, skills spillover. And that's a second gap that FDI has the capacity to fill. A third and fourth is that FDI may be able to contribute to domestic government revenue and in that way bolster the capabilities of the public sector. And very often FDI is outward facing rather than inward facing, which means it contributes to the country's export capabilities and in that way helps it fill the deficit between imports and exports.
All right, so now we know why we need it. Do we have enough of it here in South Africa, first of all?
Well, if you look at any one of those deficits, the most obvious one to go to is the difference between savings and the required level of investment. And South Africa, to achieve a level of economic growth of 5 or 6%, needs a level of investment substantially higher than current investment levels, and as things stand, our domestic savings are insufficient to meet that investment requirement. So the very short answer is if we want to achieve 6% growth, we don't have sufficient savings to finance it domestically. We have to look to overseas capital.
And if we're not getting enough overseas capital,
then the lid remains on economic growth at 3%.
So how do we change that?
Well, in research that we've done in looking at the contributors to economic growth and social inclusion, one of the single most important ingredients isn't the policy itself, but policy stability. And what investment markets and investors are very fearful of are sudden changes of direction or ambiguity. And what policy certainty does is it establishes a clear landscape, it sets the rules of the game, and it allows capital to take informed decisions with as much perspective and clarity about what tomorrow might look like. So if we can do one thing to attract foreign capital, it's establish very clear and stable rules of the game.
You're implying that we're not doing that. What role is played? What role is played in this by policy, things like incentives?
Look, incentives play some role, but again, in the work that we've done, we find that incentives aren't the overarching requirement to attract capital. One of the key requirements is just this policy clarity, transparency, and even-handed application. Where you have ambiguous or contrasting or hard to reconcile evidence, it discourages capital. And in South Africa's experience, you can think of some recent examples. When Walmart wanted to enter the country, the rules seemed to be changing as the company got deeper into its negotiation to acquire Massmart. South Korea Telecoms wanted to acquire a stake in Telkom, and they were it's hard to figure out why they were excluded, but we know that things transpired in the background that resulted in South Korea Telecom stepping away. These are examples of murky application or policy ambiguity.
So let me be specific. Are you pointing a finger at government here?
I think that it's fair to suggest that government hasn't been unambiguous and clear and open-armed.
How does this play in the rest of Africa?
Well, there's some examples of countries that I think are doing better than us. And let me be clear, I don't think South Africa's doing a shocking job, certainly if you compare to where we were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, this country was closed. We had no access to foreign capital. So we've had remarkable improvement, but that remarkable improvement misses all of the opportunity. So there's more that could be done. And the lost opportunity is what's frustrating to me. When we look elsewhere, I think we find some examples of countries that are getting this more right than wrong. And two that stand out in the research that we've done are Kenya and Zambia.
Why?
Well, it goes back to this transparency issue, that they've made it very clear that capital is welcome, that these are the rules of the game, and that there's an absence of ambiguity.
Who else is getting it right?
In conversations that you and I have had, one of my favorite examples is Chile. And to illustrate the open arm policy of Chile is, if you put a business proposal to them in the information technology cluster, they will provide you with an entrepreneurship visa, which allows you to move into the country and work there. They'll provide you with a $50,000 startup grant. They'll refund you 30% of any spend that you undertake for domestic labor. And if you purchase fixed property, you will get a rebate on the fixed property that you invest. These are clear examples of we want you, and we recognize that you have as much to offer us as we can offer you. And very often the thinking about FDI is it's extractive. If you make the rules of the game clear and collaborative, FDI becomes a contributor.
Professor Adrian Saville, thank you.
Thank you.